Gospel According to Marvel. My name is Derek Weston.
And I'm Zane Sanders.
And we are back after a bit of a hiatus. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Thank you, especially Zane, for your patience with me, as life has...
Well, you had a good excuse.
Well, I always have a good excuse, but, the whole getting married thing. But,
right.
But, I miss doing this, and I'm glad to be able to do this with you again. And we've been gone for so long that there has been just all kinds of Marvel stuff to talk about. So I wanted to first just kind of get caught up on some of the Marvel stuff that we've missed for a while. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but neither of us had seen Spider-Man Homecoming the last time we recorded. Is that correct?
That sounds right.
So that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
What were your kind of obviously we'll get into it, but what were your thoughts on Spider-Man Homecoming?
I loved Spider-Man Homecoming. I mean, so you know this. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan.
Yeah.
And I feel like Tom Holland really knocked it out of the park. The connection to the MCU with having Tony Stark be a huge part of his kind of growing as a superhero was inspired as well. I thought, it was just really well done. And I wrote an article kind of on Tony Stark's story arc, even connected to Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah.
And just felt like it was great. So.
And where can people find that? Because you've been moving a lot of your articles around. Where can we find your articles?
So Movie Pilot is closing its doors. So I've been changing all my best articles. That's subjective, I guess. To my WordPress page at zanysanders.wordpress.com. So
cool. Yeah, no, I've actually had a chance because I subscribe to your blog post or to your blog, so all these blog posts have been coming up in my Gmail, and I've had a chance to revisit some of your articles.
Which is strange because I haven't written anything in actually a really long time, but all of a sudden I have all these articles.
But it's cool because I'm getting a chance to reread some stuff and read some stuff for the first time. I really enjoyed that article. Man, Homecoming was so good. I'm gonna finally post my listing because I finally redid my ranking and I'm gonna post my listing very soon here. And Spider-Man Homecoming kind of blew up my ranking. So that was a hard thing, but in the best possible way, right? I mean, Tom Holland, like you said, can't say enough about that casting. Mm-hmm. He was great in Civil War, but really showed that he could hold down a whole movie, which was great. Michael Keaton, when you first hear, for me, when you first hear that the villain is going to be the Vulture, you're kind of like, well, let's see how they're going to do that.
Yeah. And,
I mean, just to have him kind of as this criminal who is picking through the remains of the New York battle and making new tech from it, and to have him be kind of this blue collar, not super blue collar. His house was amazing. But this blue collar worker who kind of is angry at the Tony Starks of the world. And then Tony Stark's role and how it's, again, kind of been this connective tissue throughout the MCU, was just so well done. Yeah.
One thing that I feel like Marvel's doing much better here recently with Guardians 2 and Homecoming especially, their villains are really becoming more fleshed out.
They're really picking up their villain game. Yeah. I thought Michael Keaton's Vulture was one of the best realized villains in the MCU. Just in terms of how fleshed out of a character he was. Michael Keaton just killed it. And yeah, I agree. Just and yeah, I think that goes along with Ego for Guardians of the Galaxy 2 as well. Great villain, and again, casting helps a lot with that.
For sure.
You get your Michael Keatons, you get your Kurt Russells. They're gonna do quality work. So which also kind of brings me to my hopes for Cate Blanchett. In Thor Ragnarok, which I get to see tomorrow morning.
Oh man!
So excited!
Have you read any spoilers?
I've read some early reviews that are spoiler-free reviews.
Okay.
And one of them made a comment that I think is going to carry over into our conversation about Thor: The Dark World. So I'm gonna table that for a second. But just in terms of how are you coming in feeling pretty excited for Ragnarok?
Oh yeah, the trailers are great, and just the promos, the TV spots have been fantastic. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Variety did put out a review of it with a spoiler in the title.
Oh no!
And so it's not. I don't think it's going to be a huge spoiler, but I found it and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Why would you? Come on!"
Ugh, jerks.
Yeah, but so spoilers don't really spoil movies for me most of the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I was excited about it and a little disappointed.
Yeah. Come on, guys. Yeah. You know better than that. The tone, even from the first trailer, the tone has been amazing. That they're clearly going for something a little bit more akin to Guardians. And the director of Thor Ragnarok, hold on, I'm going to look this up real quick. He's a comedy guy. And I just wanted to look his name up because I didn't want to butcher it. But so they're clearly going. What's that?
He's a New Zealand director.
Yeah.
For his comedy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a New Zealand director. His name is. Should have looked this up earlier. Come on, Chrome. You can do it. Taika Waititi, and he did this really quirky little film called The Things We Do in the Shadows. It's What We Do in the Shadows. And it's a mock documentary about vampires, and it's got one of the main guys from Flight of the Conchords, which I absolutely love. Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah.
And it's just a really silly mock documentary, and I thought, if the tone of Thor Ragnarok is anything like that, I think it'll be really fun. So it's interesting that they went more that comedic, someone who has more of that comedic background, and it definitely feels like there's a comedy sense to it. Something, again, like more in lines of like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right. Well, I think after Thor: The Dark World, they realized they need to pump some life into this part of the universe. So.
Yeah, well, and again, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that in just a second. But there's been another trailer that I want to talk about just for a minute. Black Panther, like the Black Panther. I think maybe 2 Black Panther trailers since the last time we talked. Oh my god!
So good.
I have been absolutely blown away by these Black Panther trailers.
Yeah.
I mean, they're visually stunning. The actors are great, and again, to have a mostly African American cast in a Marvel movie is really cool. But the visuals are stunning. And again, we saw Black Panther very briefly in Civil War, and just kind of feels like this is going to be a great expansion. And yeah, February can't get here soon enough for me.
Seems as though it's picking up right after we left after Civil War.
Yeah.
Maybe show some background stuff, but it's going to be mostly just continuing the story, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. Which kind of makes me wonder if we'll also get, some glimpses of Winter Soldier, because last we saw Winter Soldier, he's on Wakanda. Right. But yeah, that was man, I can't wait.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this the movie before Infinity War?
This is the last movie before Infinity War.
So there's got to be some build up in both Ragnarok and Black Panther, I would assume. But
yeah, so I think we're gonna start seeing Infinity Stones coming together. I think we're gonna start seeing that Thanos is a little bit more of a imminent threat. So all of this stuff is just really building in some really nice ways, and I can't wait to see how both Ragnarok and Black Panther are building towards Infinity War.
Definitely.
On the TV side, we had Defenders since the last time we talked.
Right.
And again, like all the other shows, we'll dive into this a little bit more. But what were your thoughts on Defenders?
I really enjoyed it. I was slightly disappointed with the villain. Like, the ending was sort of rushed, I thought. Yeah. And ambiguous at the same time. Because I'm not even really sure who died at the end. I mean, I know who didn't die, but I don't want to ruin it for anybody.
Yes, one person didn't die. Yeah, so I've been thinking about this a lot more, and I feel like the Marvel Netflix TV series have had this issue of, they kind of lose steam towards the end. I think Iron Fist had a little bit of Iron Fist had lots of problems, but it definitely lost steam towards the end. Luke Cage even kind of felt like, I always tell people that I feel like and similar, this kind of had a similar kind of thing, not to give too much spoiler. We should probably avoid spoilers at this point, but for Luke Cage, Mahershala Ali kind of is set up as the main villain, and then he goes away, and then it kind of loses steam a little bit. And Defenders had a little bit of that too. Of once the person who's kind of set up as the main villain kind of goes away, it loses a little bit of steam. I will also say that it felt like there was a lot of compensating for Iron Fist. Like, it felt like it was very late. It was very late in the series of Defenders before Danny Rand had any scenes without another Defender. Yeah. Like, he's always either with Colleen Wing, or he's with Luke, or whining about something. Or but he's almost never, all the other Defenders kind of have these pieces alone, and he's just, it's like, they're like, all right, we need to compensate for Danny Rand here.
Which is interesting, because I feel like they're setting him up as sort of one of the main people going forward.
Yeah, so, which kind of makes you...
Which, it could be good. It could show some growth in the character, which I'm really hoping for, especially as Season 2 for Iron Fist comes. So.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I've heard, though, and I need to do some research on this, is that one of the narrative threads for the Iron Fist comic is that he's not a very good Iron Fist. And that's one of the things that does come out in the show, is that, like,
right.
he's the Iron Fist, but, like, everyone kind of tells him, you're not a very good Iron Fist. Yeah. And so I do want to see if that's something that it was, like, intentional from the comics that they're trying to capture, because maybe that makes it a little bit stronger, maybe, sort of. I don't know.
Well, character development, like I said.
Character development, yeah, and again, that kind of builds into some of the things I want to talk about with Thor: The Dark World. So, without further ado, so do you remember? Did you see Thor: The Dark World in theaters?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your original thought when you saw it in the theater?
It's hard for me, I think, thinking back, to leave a Marvel movie, like leave the theater after seeing a Marvel movie and think, oh, that wasn't a very good one.
Yeah.
Because I'm like psyched to see a movie
that's
coming out, and
exactly.
I go and see it, and I'm like, yeah, that was awesome. But upon like rewatching, I realized this movie just like I don't know what was going on with it, but it just didn't grab me like the other ones.
Yeah. So, low expectations. I actually I didn't see it in the theater because my expectations were so low. So the first time I saw it, I came in with super low expectations, and I was like, oh, that's not so bad.
Yeah.
Rewatching it. Rewatching it, I kind of came in with low expectations, and low expectations were kind of like, it exceeded my low expectations, and then rewatching it was kind of like, oh wow, this is. I mean, parts are flat out boring.
Right.
Parts are flat out boring. Parts are just kind of like narratively, like, where is this going?
Right. Yeah, in my ranking, I said the story felt a little lackluster, and everything seemed forcibly pointing to Infinity War because of the Infinity Stone.
Yeah.
But it was just rushed in all the good spots, and straining to stay committed to the unimaginative love story of Thor and Jane.
Ugh, yeah. So I watched it last night with my wife, and she was totally zoned out. But it's Natalie Portman. I think I gave her a pass on the first Thor, but she's not really compelling in this role as Jane Foster, and I mean, maybe it's they didn't give her the right material to work with, but I mean, it's not a great performance by her. Honestly, like there's a and it's hard. So I'm going to do something that I hate to do, but like there's a comparison here between Thor and the Star Wars prequels. Yeah. Where I'm kind of looking at Thor and Natalie Portman and Jane Foster and going, why did these two people fall in love? The same way that I looked at Padme and Anakin, and I'm starting to go, okay, the common thread here is Natalie Portman. we might have discovered our issue.
Yes. For sure. Well, and then not only is like that love story sort of boring, but, like, Sif is such a badass.
Yeah.
Like, you're sitting there yelling at the TV. Why are you not with her? Odin is telling him this. I'm telling him this. What is going on?
Like, dude, Sif's right there. She's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of that, too. And I think it almost feels like they It almost feels like there's scenes of Sif missing, because any more of Sif probably would have made Jane just look absolutely unacceptable as the romantic interest. It almost seems like they probably came to Jamie Alexander later and said, we have to take some scenes of you out, or it's just going to make Natalie Portman look bad. It's just not okay. So one of the criticisms that's coming up for Thor Ragnarok is that Thor personally doesn't have much of a character arc. And that is definitely a criticism that I felt could be applied to Thor: The Dark World too. I think because Thor's character arc happened in Thor 1.
In the first movie. Yeah.
And it's like, there's nowhere else for him to go. Like, he had his transformation. One of the things that becomes very clear at the beginning of Thor: The Dark World is he's had his transformation from brash warrior to, he's more humble. He doesn't celebrate as much as his other comrades do, and some of that makes it, is because he's lovesick or whatever. But he's also been humbled, and like, he knows what a good king is supposed to be. He knows what a good ruler is supposed to be. He feels the burden of fighting these battles, and he's been through. He's had his character arc. And I feel like that's something that maybe is just kind of an inherent problem with the character.
Well, anytime he's shown up in any of the Avengers or anything like that, there's always a problem that he is like really solely responsible for fixing, because he's one of the most powerful of the Avengers.
Yeah.
So I feel like the problem in this movie was that, like, the Aether was affecting Jane.
Yeah.
Right? So, and the Dark Elves, I guess. But
yeah, I guess.
What? They were what? That was so easy to fight them.
Yeah.
So really, the main things are like, the Aether affecting Jane, and then the relationship with Loki.
Right.
Was sort of, those were the two main problems. So this was more of like a, I don't know, Thor rom-com minus the com. And really minus the romance part, because
that's a problem. When you have a rom-com that is minus the rom and minus the com, that is problematic.
And then you have the wonderful Christopher Eccleston playing
wasted
Malekith. Yeah, completely wasted.
Wasted.
Like, didn't even seem like a real villain.
I mean,
for most of the movie.
So this is like, I mean, if you want a poster child for Marvel's villain problem, this is it. I mean, this is the wasting of a great actor behind makeup and made up language, and just not caring at all about what it is that he's trying to accomplish. Not even 100% sure what he's trying to accomplish. Don't think that I care. Never really feel gravity that, like,
right.
Asgard or Earth are really in trouble. Like, there's no tension. There's no personal relationship between him and Thor. I mean, there is nothing here that makes Malekith a compelling villain.
Yeah. I think the only thing, rethinking about it, the only thing that did sort of make it work was that there was that history.
Yeah.
The stories that Thor grew up on of the Dark Elves did have that connection. Like, oh, these are those people that I grew up hearing about.
Yeah.
But even that wasn't very compelling.
Well, and it could have been, don't want to, remake the film, but, it could have been more compelling, and especially could have been more compelling if there would have been just a flashback of Thor's mother reading those stories to him and Loki as a kid. Because that would have also created the emotional pull when she dies. That also was like, that should have been more epic, and it didn't have the emotional weight that it could have had.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just have this little flashback of her reading those stories to him and Loki, you could have believed that Loki had an emotional connection to her, that Thor had this emotional connection to her, and that they had this connection to this story of the Dark Elves. And all of that was missing. All of that, Thor's mom dies. That should Odin's wife, Loki's stepmom, all of that should have been more epic. It kind of wasn't.
Yeah.
It kind of was, I don't know, because kind of fell flat. So one of the things that you were kind of leaning towards this, it seems like a lot of this just kind of feels like a vehicle for the ether as an Infinity Stone.
Right. It was almost like, hey, let's make a movie on one of the Infinity Stones.
It's like,
Thor could do that, I
guess. Thor's good with Infinity Stones. The whole idea that the ether was hidden where nobody can reach it. Again, not so hard to reach.
Jane reached it accidentally. She wasn't looking for it, and she got there. Although you could argue that they didn't know the power of the ether well enough, because it really sort of reached out to her.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure they didn't think, Thor's grandfather didn't think it could do, so.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what he was thinking?
They should have done a little more research on it.
It's not in a vault, it's not, anything. But, I don't know. I don't know, so kind of transitioning, like, what kind of thematic, we've bashed this movie into the ground. But what kind of thematic things did you pull out of your most recent viewing of it?
There was a lot of redemption story arc for Loki. I think even for Thor a little bit, trying to right his wrongs, maybe with Jane.
Yeah.
But especially for that brother relationship between Loki and Thor.
Yeah. It's also kind of undone by the end.
Right.
But it's like Loki redeems himself, also then takes over Asgard.
Yeah. Which I'm sure that redemption story arc will continue in Ragnarok.
Yeah. Yeah.
Potentially. Loki, even in the comics, does sort of do this thing where he's back and forth.
Yeah.
And always ends up being the bad guy.
And for what it's worth, as slow and painful as this movie is at times, it's way better when Loki's on screen. And Tom Hiddleston continues to just own that character, and it's way better when Loki's on screen. And you do actually get the sense of a Loki who did care about, his relationship with Odin is problematic, but he definitely did care about his, adopted mom, and he definitely does care in a sibling rivalry kind of way. He does care about Thor. And that, their relationship is problematic at best, but Loki tends to have more of a character arc and more character development than Thor does.
Yeah.
Like he's just the more compelling character.
Right. Well, and in a lot of ways, I feel like we as people can connect to Loki's character better.
Yeah.
Because even though we do have people in our lives that we love, there are a lot of times where we're sort of self-serving.
Yeah.
And like we want to do what's best for ourselves.
Yeah.
So, and that's very much what Loki does in this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it. Is like Loki is relatable in the way that like the sibling rivalry piece is relatable, and the at some point Thor just kind of goes back to being a god and untouchable and immortal. I was telling Shannon last night he kind of has the Superman problem. Like he's unbeatable.
Yes.
But Loki has not just kind of like physical flaws, you know, of not being as strong as Thor. He also has like these character flaws, which make him super interesting. Mm-hmm. And like one of the really startling images, as this is kind of coming back to me, is that like Loki is projecting this image of himself kind of held together in his prison cell, and then when he drops that image, his room is a mess. He's a mess. He's actually been grieving. He's actually been hurt by the fact that his mother's dead, that his brother has imprisoned him, that, you know, he's still dealing with his own parentage and things like that. Like, he's actually a mess. And, like, that I could relate to. Like, that projecting this image of I've got everything together when really inside you're a mess and things are chaotic. Like, that's a character that's relatable.
Definitely.
So what other themes do you got for me? I actually think we just redeemed in the last 5 minutes. I think we just redeemed a big chunk of the movie.
But really, we just said Tom Hiddleston saved. I think going back to the Aether and being buried underground and like not really understood, but just thrown somewhere for safekeeping. It sort of reminded me of how like the sins of our fathers have a way of returning to us. Even just like how we tend to hide our fears and our failures under this mask.
Yeah.
And how a lot of times those things come up in the most inopportune moments.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I think the fact that we try to bury things instead of facing them. And there's a great quote that I'm going to butcher, but the pain that we don't transform, we transmit. I'll look that up because I think but you get the point. It's the things that we don't fit. We can't. I'm gonna butcher another one. We can't. I think it's James Baldwin who says, we can't change everything we face, but we can't. We can't change everything we face, but nothing can be. Anyway, I'm gonna look that up and I'll get it back to you. Anyway, it's the idea that we have to confront our flaws and stuff like that. I'm really sorry for the last 45 seconds of babbling.
We can edit that out.
No, we'll keep it. Because I want to confront the fact that sometimes I butcher really good quotes.
There you go.
But it's the fact that, like, the things that we bury and try to forget about. And again, they did a really crappy job of burying the ether.
Which isn't that true of our own crap?
Absolutely.
Like, we do a terrible job of burying it.
Absolutely. And
it always finds its way to the surface.
And it finds its way back, and it finds its way to bite us and remind us. and usually to do more damage than if we would have just confronted it at the time. Usually finds a way to hurt more people, to do more damage than if we would have just said, I need to face this right now. And, I certainly know that in my own life, the things that I've tried to hide, the things that I've tried to bury, always come back to the surface, and they always come back to bite you. There is really something here about, not just burying things, but really facing them and really, exposing them to the light, right? Mm-hmm. Because the whole thing about the ether is like, and the dark elves is about consuming, this idea of a consuming darkness.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of things are changed when they're exposed to the light. When things are only dealt with when they're exposed to the light. I think one of the things that we're seeing right now, I think, not to make too much of a tangent, but I think, with what's happening with Hollywood right now, with Harvey Weinstein, with Kevin Spacey, things like that. It's like, there's this systemic, chauvinism, misogyny, sexism that's just been rampant in the industry, and now it's coming to the surface, and it's painful I know it's painful for the victims, and it's painful for, a lot of us who are fans of the art, but, these things are coming to the light, and I actually think it's a while it might be painful, I think it's a good thing that the light is being exposed on these kinds of abuses, and maybe that will make them less frequent. And I think maybe it'll make some systemic change in the industry.
Yeah. Well, I think that's applicable everywhere.
Yeah.
Obviously, but even thinking about that idea of darkness consuming us, like what darknesses do we allow to consume us?
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that. I was just riffing.
No, it's a compelling question of there are so I will say for myself, one of the things that I struggle with, and people wouldn't automatically associate this with me, is anger. And it's not so much the anger of like, I don't fly off the handle, I don't have a short fuse, but I'll let anger build. Like I'll let resentments and anger build, and then it becomes like volcanic eruption instead of like, dealing with things in the moment, facing the things as they come up. And then, like, I can really sour a relationship by letting resentments and bitterness and anger build.
Right.
And I think that for me feels like a darkness that I let overcome, that I let take over. And that's really something that I've really struggled with and really prayed about, of like, really praying about ways that I can deal with my anger in the moment in ways that aren't hurtful to people. And that's a challenge. Like, that's a big shift for me. Again, also, like, as an introvert, as someone who mostly does their, you know what I'm talking about. As someone who mostly does the work inside my head, like, sometimes it'll even take me, a day or two to realize that something made me angry.
Right.
And then, like, okay, is it worth dragging this up? Well, yeah, it's better to drag it up than to, like, let the resentment build and let the darkness consume.
Yeah, for sure. For anyone listening that doesn't necessarily connect with that, Derek and I are both Enneagram 5s. So like, we speak the same language. So go read about Enneagram 5s and then you'll understand.
And then you'll wonder how it is that two Enneagram 5s ended up doing a podcast together. So thematically, what other themes? I feel like we're actually I feel like we're doing a lot of service to Thor: The Dark World right now.
Yeah.
What other thematic things do you think come up from this movie?
I have written down, how do we see things that we don't understand? Sort of going back to the Aether, but even with each other, like how do we connect with people that we may not agree with or understand on a deep level?
Yeah. Or how do we understand the actions of someone who would go after Jane Foster when Sif is right there?
Right.
Like we don't, you know, it's, you know, there's a lot of, you know, a lot of the emotional tension of this movie is people not understanding each other's methods. And I think a lot of people in particular kind of look at Thor, and again, this is a changed Thor, who isn't interested so much in being king, who isn't interested so much even honestly in this movie isn't even so much interested in the glory of battle. He's motivated by different things, and he's motivated by his love for Jane, and he's motivated by his love for Loki even. That I think is somewhat, hard to understand, given what they've gone through.
Right. Well, I that really comes out in that line that you mentioned earlier. I think it was before we started recording. That Thor said.
Yeah.
What was that line?
So it's let me butcher another line. No, no. He says, I would rather be a good man than a great king.
Right. And
I mean that was one of the few like really great takeaway lines from the movie of him saying, it's no longer the most important thing for me now is not so much that I am the powerful ruler, it's that I use the power that I have for good, to help people, to protect people. And that again, that is a complete 180 from the Thor that we see at the very beginning of the first Thor film. So again, like long, big picture, long arc here. Thor's had this pretty significant character arc. It's just we're kind of on the other side of it by the time the Dark World comes around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's motivated by different things. He's energized by different things. He's not doing the typical things that you would expect this incredible warrior to be motivated by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It brings the question to my mind: how do we, or I guess, can we be open to what God is doing in our lives, in the world, even when like those things aren't necessarily what our tradition is saying like God is, or like what we expect God to be like. Are we open to allow God to be God and not have to fit in our box of what we think He is?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and one of the speakers said this line that I just absolutely loved, which was, so often we cling to tradition, but he said, the tradition is movement. Like the story of God and God's people is kind of a constant movement from, through Exodus, through exile, into Promised Land, and constantly moving. And our tradition is actually to not stagnate and stay in one place. Our tradition is to keep moving towards, more inclusivity, more love, more grace, more openness, more justice. And sometimes that feels like change, and that feels like we're going up against the things that, we once valued for the sake of the new thing that God is doing. And that's, it can be confusing for some people. It can be disorienting for some people, but I think it's it's really for me. I think it's what makes me more oriented towards watching what the new things are that people are doing in terms of their faith expressions, because it's like, or in terms of their social justice expressions, because I kind of feel like that's usually where God is out on the forefront of those changes and those movements, even when they feel scary or uncertain.
Right. I'm trying to find it in this book, but Richard Rohr says that when Jesus says repent, the actual translation, like, of the original word that he said really means to, like, change your thinking.
Yeah. The Greek. The Greek word is metanoia, and it means a complete about face, and it's a change of direction, but it's not just a change of physical direction. It's a change of thinking and feeling, and totally reorienting yourself to a new way of living and a new way of being.
Yeah.
So I think that's exactly that's kind of where Thor is. He's oriented towards love. I think love for Jane, but also love for the people of the realms that he now feels a strong sense of call to protect.
Right.
And so he does some things that folks around him don't fully get.
Yep. That's all I got.
I was about to say, have we have we done everything we can with this movie? So I wanted to one of the things that I for listeners, one of the things that I talked to Zane about of part of what the MCU has done for me is that it's made me really dig back into comics, like, in a way that, like, I'm really thankful for the movies, because I feel like they've given me a new, like, it's almost been, like, okay to, like, dive back into being a big comic book nerd again. And so I've found a great one here in Baltimore, Amazing Spiral in Baltimore, if anyone's in the area. It's a great comic book store. And so I just kind of wanted to take some time to sort of at the end of our shows and just kind of talk about if we're reading anything, if just kind of as we're watching these awesome movies, or if we're finding some comic books that we really like. So I have one. I just when we were on our honeymoon, I actually did a lot of comic book reading on my honeymoon, and I just finished and I read the first trade paperback, which is the first 6 issues bundled together of Sam Wilson, Captain America. And for those of you who are only familiar with the film, Sam Wilson is Falcon, and in the comic books, he takes on the mantle of Captain America, and it's really fascinating to see how the world responds to one, a different Captain America, and two, black Captain America. There's a lot of rhetoric that seems taken directly from early 2009, after Obama was inaugurated, of not my Captain America, which is it's really fascinating, and it's a really good read, and they do a really good job of talking about sort of the racial dynamics of having a new Captain America, but also, even just talking about tradition, how some people just won't ever accept something new because they've been used to they have a traditional Captain America that they've gotten used to. So that's been a good find, and it's a good read that I'm looking forward to reading some more. How about you? Are you reading anything? You found anything?
Yeah, I said I was gonna go get something, and of course I didn't.
That's okay.
I would like to, because it's been years. I don't even remember the last time I looked at the Infinity War series. So I would love to get back into that, but I would also the Spider-Verse stuff. I want to get a book on that because like my knowledge of it is very limited. Most of my knowledge is with Peter Parker, and so I'd love to get to know some of those other spider people.
There are spider people out there. And again, like they've expanded Spider-Man in so many interesting ways, and I'm kind of not very well versed on that either, but there's so much good stuff to read. And I've got a stack here. I've got Ta-Nehisi Coates' run on Black Panther that I'm hoping to finish before the movie comes out, and
February 16th, 2018.
Yeah.
You got a little time.
I got some time. And then just some other storylines that, what's been interesting is that, so I know that Ragnarok is actually a combination of a Thor storyline, Thor Ragnarok, and then also Planet Hulk. So those are two stories that I'm hoping to jump into soon, and that I'm sure will hopefully go on sale because for movie tie-ins. So
I'm really interested to see how they Kevin Feige recently came out and said they're going to try to do a Hulk trilogy, with Thor Ragnarok being the first of that trilogy. And so I'm interested to see where they go from this World War Hulk kind of storyline tied in with Ragnarok, and whether they go towards what's the other one? That he's Planet Hulk. Where they sort of so it'll be interesting to see if that's what they do. I would love to see them bring the leader back into things. Who sort of surfaced a little bit in The Incredible Hulk. But that would be really cool to see moving forward from Infinity War and beyond.
There's correct me if I'm wrong, and there's some legal stuff still with solo Hulk films with
Hulk's movie rights are owned by Universal. The solo rights.
Right.
So the way they get around it is by putting him in a Thor movie, because they're allowed to do that according to the way the rights are written.
Right, but I mean, and like we've talked about the Sony and Marvel stuff with Spider-Man, and of course the Fox stuff with the X-Men, but I feel like that hardly ever gets mentioned. The fact that Hulk also is contractually bound up with Universal, and which is why we haven't had a solo Hulk film since that first one.
Well, and that's a reason why I want to get into the Spider-Verse stuff too. Because Sony is starting their own Spider-Verse without Spider-Man. Starting with a Venom movie with Tom Hardy.
Which I'm there for.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think a couple years ago I was fan casting on Movie Pilot, and I said Tom Hardy would be the perfect Venom.
Well done.
So, I think it could be good, but it really depends on how they connect it, and if they do, how that's going to be. I don't understand completely how those rights happen.
I don't see how you do it. But I honestly I have very little faith in Sony. So there's that. But all right, so I think that's about it for today. Thank you for listening. There's
a couple things coming out this month, including Ragnarok. But Punisher Season 1 comes out November 17th.
Yeah.
And then The Runaways Season 1 comes out, I believe, on Hulu on November 21st.
And how have you followed Inhumans at all?
No. I've read terrible reviews about it. I honestly don't even know how to see it. I mean, it was in IMAX, and then it was on ABC, and I think it's on ABC again, but I haven't been compelled yet. And unless they do some
inescapable tie-in to the rest of the MCU,
Right.
that may stay way far on the back burner for me.
Yeah. We put up our unofficial MCU watch order on
Yes.
our WordPress page, thegospelaccordingtomarvel.wordpress.com, and that's on there, but
Cool.
it's right at the bottom.
So we just might not get to it. I mean, you know.
Yeah. I don't know. I would have to watch it first, I guess.
We'll see.
But-
We'll see. We'll see. There's gonna, there's gonna be so many other things to watch between now and then that but Punisher's coming up. There had been talk of after what happened in Las Vegas. There had been talk of delaying Punisher release. I don't know if that's still going to happen, but we'll keep you updated on that as we know stuff.
Oh.
Cool. So, Zane, where can people find us on the Twitters and on the interwebs?
I am at Zane E. Sanders on Twitter. Derek's at Derek Weston. And then our Gospel According to Marvel page is at Marvel_Gospel.
Cool.
You can find us there on Twitter and then on Facebook as well.
Cool. Yeah, so hit us up. Let us know if you have comments, questions, and want to give a shout out to a couple folks who I know have used our podcast, the first half of our podcast. Really humbled and grateful for that. Who've used it with your youth ministries and things like that. That's really awesome. If you're doing stuff like that, let us know. We'd love to have you, share how the podcast is being used in your ministry and other things that we can be doing that'll help you out, because that's exactly why we're doing this.
Yes.
It's not just for us to geek out for an hour or so. It's mostly that, but if our geeking out for an hour or so can also be useful for you in doing your ministry, then that's really awesome, and we're humbled and grateful that we get to be a part of that. So until next time, I think what's our next? Oh, we have. I think what's next in our watch order, Zane?
Of course, I just got off that page.
I think do we have?
What is this? Thor: The Dark World. So we have Captain America. No, yeah, Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier.
Or on our list.
So
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, we actually might have a few episodes of
between
Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Coming before that. So, and again, shout out. I'm gonna have when I put this up, I'm also gonna have the episode that Zane did with my friend Amy, and thank you to Amy Shoemaker for stepping in for me for those first few episodes of Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I'll have that up as well, and so we'll either be talking about Winter Soldier next or the next handful of episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. One of those two things will be happening. But until next time, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye, guys.